I'm Bill Oughton of Oughton Claims Management.
I'm Chantel Roberts of CMR Consulting, and welcome to the Art of Adjusting podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about life as an insurance adjuster from the perspective of property, auto, liability, or workers' compensation adjusters. Our goal is to bring interesting topics in the world of claims adjusting to people who are working as an adjuster now and to people who are considering a career as a claims adjuster. Good morning, Chantel. How are you today?
Good morning. I am doing well. How are you?
Doing good.
Oh, I was
We
about to
are
spill my
very
tea.
busy with liability claims this month, and this is our 50th episode, which is really cool. And
Happy anniversary.
yeah, I mean, podcast anniversary. I don't know
Yeah,
how we
podcast anniversary. I have no idea, but
episode anniversary,
ep epiversary,
epiversary. All right,
epiversary.
we can make
Yes,
up words wherever we want. Insurance
exactly. It's our
companies do it,
podcast. We can
right?
do whatever we want. Yeah, so happy 50th epiversary.
Yep, we've covered a
And
bunch of topics. We've tried to cover a lot of property, liability, not too much workers' comp and auto, but a little bit.
yeah,
Um,
maybe we should
so
focus on auto a little bit, just a little bit. But I'm not a big fan of workers' comp because, the deal is that you just have to pay. And it's like, I don't understand the concept because you pay and then you get to investigate. Like I investigated work comp in Texas back in the day. And like you had to pay within 3 days. Well,
yeah,
you don't have your investigation done, but you could claw that back if it ended up not. But I mean, who could do that?
yeah.
Now, ironically, my brother-in-law has one in Arkansas, and they get 30 days to investigate. So,
Oh, okay. I don't know what the rule is in New York.
nah, me neither. It's like, what are you? Anyway, so where do you see yourself in another 50 episodes? Or where do you see the podcast, I guess?
That's interesting. I think we're going to have more guests. I also think that we're going to be answering more questions from listeners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what we have today.
Yeah.
We have now a fifth listener.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Doug, I
Uh,
believe his name is.
Dustin.
Dustin.
Yes.
Sorry, Dustin. Yes.
Dustin
So
from an undisclosed location in Ohio.
yes,
Um,
he has been anonymized to
eh,
protect his identity, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Well, it's nobody's business, but ours. So Dustin is an independent adjuster, and most independent adjusters out there are property handlers. Some auto, some liability, but most of them are property. And he had a question for me as to how to become a liability adjuster, why you would even want to. And I don't know.
It's fun.
Yeah,
It
it
is
is fun.
it is so much fun. I think that liability is a lot more like the murder mysteries.
Oh yeah.
You're putting things together much more so than property. Now, property is great. Love property, but I really like liability because not everybody, but sometimes there are people who are lying to you
Yep.
and you get to, take photographs or go to the scene and you get to take recorded statements and
Well, you're building
watch
a
people.
case. You're
Yeah,
building a case of evidence
yeah,
in support of one way or the other,
exactly. Exactly.
one side of the story or the other. And you never really know
Mhm.
what the truth is.
No, no.
Uh,
And um, I think I had mentioned previously that my husband had suggested to his people to watch the first 48 hours, which is a police docudrama where they follow police investigators around to learn how to investigate. And it's true, that's what you get to do with liability. And I like that personally.
yeah,
I think
me
it's
too.
fun.
It is fun. And you have some mysteries to solve on the property side too.
Mhm.
If you got a case of arson or if you suspect fraud or something like that. But
Absolutely.
you do have to be a little more of a detective um, Not really, not technically a detective,
Right.
not a private investigator. That's a different line of work. But you do have to dig a little bit and solve mysteries.
Hmm.
So it is very interesting. And so what he was really curious about were licensing issues, the day-to-day activities of what a liability adjuster would do, the pay structure, particularly for IAs or independent adjusters, and whether or not an adjuster should specialize in something or generalize. So those are all good questions
Great
that we can
questions.
answer here. So
Yes.
um, when it comes to licensing here in New York, we have a general adjuster, meaning that once you get that license, you can handle just about any lines of insurance claims that there are. Um, I don't believe that there's a liability only license in New York. I think your
Right.
property, general, they may have workers' comp. Um,
I don't know either, but I do know, like, if you go to CIRCON, for example, or I think it's NICR, where CIRCON is now, or all the states are kind of feeding everything in to get your licenses.
right,
It will say what kind of licenses you need. And I have a lot of licenses in most of the states that require them. And my advice would be to get that general one, uh, or if they offer, because I know in some states, I want to say it's Mississippi, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me. Um, I want to say that it's like property casualty and then workers' comp.
got it.
And so like they separate it out like that. There's not a general where you could handle everything, but some states do have that general. But some states break it down workers' comp and then property casualty,
Right.
which would be your liability in that instance.
If I was designing it, I think I would have a license for liability, property, auto, workers' comp, and then I would have a general which covered all of them. I don't know if that's the way New York is set up, but that's just how my brain works. So that's how I
I
think about it anyway.
I do know that Canada does that.
Hmm.
Some of the provinces do work it out where like you just have an auto license and you can't do anything but auto. And I mean, personally, I am more of a let's do broader ones. I'm kind of opposite of you, amazingly. I mean, like go figure it's the story of this podcast, right?
Right,
Um, where I think I would rather have like a general and then maybe a workers' comp because workers' comp is different. Um, but I feel that if you are doing auto claims, you are doing a lot of the things that a property and casualty adjuster has because even though most carriers have the property damage adjuster and the bodily injury adjuster when it comes to like third party or even first party, they'll have a med pay or PIP adjuster and the property damage adjuster. It's not just one adjuster handling the whole thing, like the
right.
whole automobile claim, which is what I did. But they do separate it out. I still feel that with an auto claim, you're still working property damage. It's got wheels
Right.
instead of, an
But you may be
address.
hiring an appraiser to do that estimate or relying on the shops,
You do that anyway with homeowners
right,
nowadays. If it's like a water burst, like a pipe burst thing, they get the remediation people out there, and the remediation people are writing the estimates and stuff.
right, right.
So,
So as far as licensing goes, the short story is you're better off from a career standpoint, in my opinion, to have something like the general adjuster's license so that you can be flexible because there are going to be times where an opportunity may come up for you to help on a liability claim, even though you may not do them every day. You may not be very clear on what to do. There are times where they just need a body to go take some photos, or they need a statement, and they can provide you with very specific questions to ask,
Mhm.
and then you'll use your mind and your brain to fill in the rest when you need to. But so I would say you're better off having that than not. So it opens up other doors of opportunities for you. And
I agree. I think that, and that's one of the reasons you had asked, well, and we'll probably get into that too. And you know how, what my answer always is do you specialize or do you, do everything? That's why I like having everybody do everything. Even if you start off in one side and then have to move over to another after a bit, because you become more well-rounded, then you can fill in when you need to, blah, blah, blah. So,
multi-line adjusters are becoming more rare
mhm.
as companies tend to specialize their people within their own building. Um, but for an independent adjuster, I think your best bet is to strive to be multi-line, unless you just love hail claims and hurricanes, and that's all you want to do. Then stick with property. There's but one of the good things about liability or being able to handle liability claims is that when the wind doesn't blow and the
Mm.
weather's not bad and claims slow down, you can maintain a small backlog of some liability work that you can do.
This is a good point. There was a period of time, and I know it doesn't seem like it now with all of the hurricanes and catastrophes that we have with the wildfires, the hurricanes and things, but there was a time when all of the cat adjusters, the storm chasers, so to speak, uh, started coming inside. And I was very hesitant, of course, to hire them because I knew as soon as a storm came, they would leave. And the point I'm making is the same thing that you just said is if you can be that well-rounded adjuster by being multi-lined, if the wind's not blowing, you can do something else.
Right.
If you do only want to do, let's say, liability or only want to do property damage, I would recommend that you find that niche and become that expert in it so that people like the carriers come to look at you in like a multi-state area. For example, the company that I used to work for and that I was a manager for, we were well known for tractor trailers. We understood tractor trailers. We knew them. We hired truck drivers. We hired tractor trailer auto mechanics, to be the estimators. We knew those things backwards and forwards, and then we taught them how to read a policy. So those guys gave us an edge that they would, I mean, carriers would pay us to drive from Little Rock to Alabama
Mhm.
because we were that good. So just something to think about if you
Yes,
want to.
specialty doesn't necessarily mean property or liability. It
No, it
might
doesn't.
mean property claims at grain mills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You handle one or two claims in something specialty like that, and
Yes.
that carrier, that claims department is going to say, "Oh, that's the guy that did such a great job on those last two. Send it to him or
Yeah.
her."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
before you know it, that's all you do.
That's all you do.
And
And
and then you get tied in with all the subject matter experts that you
yes.
might need for that specialty type of claim. And they're out there and encountering other carriers that insure the same things, and they say, "Oh, well, I know this guy. I know this
Yes.
guy that does this grain mill claims, and so wherever." And
Right.
that's how you wind up specializing in different things. And it's happened to me over and over in various ways throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say the specialties that I'm in now because they're live claims that I don't really want to talk about, but there are some specific niche industries that I just always get those claims because I've handled them for many, many years now.
Right.
And, I already know, I know resources for things. So that's how you specialize. That doesn't happen overnight. You
Yes.
kind of have to build your repertoire.
Absolutely.
Um,
Well, nothing happens overnight, unfortunately. I tell my students, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell says that you have to devote 10,000 hours. And you
yeah,
and I had talked about this previously
yeah,
about how long that works out to be. I think it's like 10 years.
yeah.
So,
Outliers, great
yeah,
book.
yeah,
He
yeah.
talks a lot about the hockey players in Canada and why the culture up there generates so many great hockey players. And it's
Mm-hmm,
because these kids are on skates when they're 2 years old.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And uh, I kind of got a little tickled because you said niche as well. And I'm so awkward. I feel so self-aware when I say niche because apparently that's like quote unquote the French way to say it. And I got called out one time, totally off topic, guys. So feel free to like fast forward. I got called out one time because I say respite instead of respite. Um,
Oh, I would
and
say respite.
I say respite, and uh, I think respite is the British way to say it, and respite maybe the American way. I don't know. Maybe,
It
but
could be. I mean, you're in a different segment of the country too, so I
well,
know that
that's true too. I just know that I watch too many, British crime docudrama police things, you know. It's where like Netflix was only bringing up that kind of algorithm. Okay, y'all can start listening. Stop fast forwarding. Yeah, okay.
well, another thing I've noticed on the topic of pronunciations is that you and like everybody from maybe Pennsylvania westward puts the emphasis on the wrong syllable when they say the word insurance.
Oh, okay. So how do you say it?
I just said it,
In
insurance. You
insurance.
say you say insurance.
Well, now you're just making fun of my accent, and
But that
I
happens, like I
resent
said,
that.
is
I,
my father-in-law is from Ohio,
uh,
Columbus,
uh-huh.
and my ex-father-in-law. I got two. I'm lucky enough to have two wonderful father-in-laws.
Aw,
Anyway, the one is from Columbus, Ohio, and he says insurance,
insurance.
insurance. So
Well, that's like a Southern thing, and
it is kind of a southern thing, yeah.
yeah,
Insurance.
I think Ohio, and I am,
It might be like a
sorry,
Midwest
Dustin. I
thing.
know that you're in Ohio, but I think Ohio has a little bit of a personality disorder because they consider themselves to be Midwestern, and I'm like, that is so not West to begin with, and it's not mid.
I
So,
have heard people refer to folks from Buffalo, New York, people in the city of New York City,
uh,
referring to people living in Buffalo, New York as Midwesterners. How weird is that?
that is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. And it's like Missouri also has a disorder because it's like, are you Southern? Are you Northern? We don't know,
Right, right.
and they'll say, well, what do you call this carbonated beverage? It's a Coke. Well, then you're Southern. It's like that's what you are. So yeah, I also got
Anyway, well, we've rambled long enough
all
here.
right. Yep, yep,
Let's
yep.
back to our topic of adjusters. So,
Oh,
our friend Dustin is an independent adjuster. For those who don't know, that means that you're kind of an independent contractor. You're not employed by an insurance company.
mhm.
The ones who are employed by the insurance company as employees, we call those staff adjusters. Sometimes they'll be called desk adjusters, sometimes examiners. And these are the people that are usually sending the assignments out. They're primarily chained to a desk, but they can go out. If there are claims that are handled in their backyard, depending on the carrier, they might be, going out and doing their own investigations as well. But for the most part, those are the folks that assign things to the IAs, and they're usually in a central location. They may, that company probably has an agency force that covers a huge a geographic territory. So that's why they need independent adjusters,
Right.
because they just can't staff all these areas fully. So
Yeah, back in the day, And it kind of goes circular. And of course, now the pandemic messed everything up because now everybody's working from home, where it went where there were lots of branch offices. And then the carriers started to tighten the belt and so brought everybody into major hubs. And so, for example, Overland Park, um, uh, Omaha, Irving, Schaumburg, Illinois, all of those are major hubs for insurance companies now. I mean,
Hmm.
like that's where they have all their offices and everything.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so we were in that hub kind of place where I would handle 5 or 6 states. Now, when I was working with Lloyd's, I handled the contiguous United States. So there you go.
Which is difficult to do from to travel around to handle claims like
Hmm.
that is almost impossible. You have to,
We used
um,
IAs or
yeah,
independent adjusters uh, to be our eyes and ears, except for in the state of Arkansas because we were in Arkansas.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, a property general adjuster would be the type of person that would travel a long distance for very large losses. Those are people that just handle, $1 million or $500,000 and up losses, and they want that person because they specialize in that, almost like the grain mill example I said
Mm-hmm.
earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they're um, they're expert in managing those large claims. So they might travel a little more. And they can be staff adjusters too. I've seen a lot of GAs, general adjusters that are on the staff of a large carrier. So,
Yeah. And there are often times, and I think when catastrophes happen, when a carrier will hire a group of adjusters, field adjusters to
on a temporary
handle,
basis.
yeah, to handle the overflow of writing estimates. I think those are 1099 or employees, or I mean, they're
Yep.
contract workers. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So one of the questions that was posed here is how does what's the life of an independent adjuster who only handles liability like? I can tell you we're pretty few and far between. There's not many firms out there that I know of that will openly brag that that's all they do, like we do. And I can tell you that like a normal day, we're as busy as any property adjuster would be. The difference is that our files stay open for years, um, rather than weeks or sometimes months, depending. And when you are loaded up with as many files as we have open, you can't just stop and handle property. It's very different kind of dynamic. You can handle a case, caseload of property with a few liability claims sprinkled in that you have to make calls on every once in a while.
mhm.
Um, but if you get up over 100 or even just 60 or 80 liability claims, your ability to drop everything and go handle a fire loss is pretty much gone. Like you can't just do that.
Why do you say that? Because again, I see carriers give, and of course, we all know that carriers overwork the adjusters,
Hmm.
which is a, whole different podcast. But I see carriers giving adjusters, a liability adjusters, 300 claims under the guise that, yeah, you don't have to do anything for several months. I mean, like it's a lot of hurry up and wait. So maybe the first few weeks, there's a lot of stuff going. And then you just diary it out and maybe follow up every once in a while to say, you still treating? You still treating? You still
Hmm.
treating? You still
Yeah.
treating? And then once they finish and you get all the meds, then there's a whole bunch of flurry of activity while you try to settle the claim. So why do you say um not to have
Because
that many?
because they get layered
Right.
and all of a sudden it's like we get medical records now every day.
Mm,
Every day there's records coming in that we have on different files that we
mm,
have to address. Every day we're chasing witnesses for statements or policyholders or claimants. Every day Now, it's not every day that we have to go do scene inspections. So, and I think that's where it's a little different on property. You kind of want to be out every day looking at stuff. Maybe designate 1 or 2 days in the office to get your estimates done. And that's kind of flipped on its head here, where if I try and go out 1 or 2 days a week, and the rest of the time the desk. And the same for our, so a field adjuster here is primarily the one that's going out and doing the in-persons and the photographs and collecting evidence so we can store it if we need that. And then the inside person is the one that's kind of driving the desk and acting in much the way a desk examiner would at a carrier, with the flexibility that when something bad, big happens, that we have to go out and handle that too. So the timing is a little different. The file management skills that you have to have are very important. Managing a diary, knowing how to, schedule things out. If you've got if you're going to report every 30 days, you set your diary every 20 days
Hmm.
because you're going to be late.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so that
Something's going to explode.
something's going to explode,
Yeah.
or something's going to come in before then that really deserves attention right away.
Hmm.
And there are emergencies that come up. There are times where a new one will come in with a coverage question that has to be answered within like 5 days. They
Hmm.
they want this investigation done, at least a statement and some photos done as soon as possible so that they can make a coverage decision. Because if there's no coverage, they've got to issue that denial very fast. And New York is tough. You got to do it really quick here.
Hmm.
So,
Well, you know what? One of the things that we haven't talked about is the time. I would tell my adjusters or my candidates that I was interviewing as an independent adjuster. I'm like, look, here's the deal. I mean, this isn't a 40-hour work week. It's probably not even a 60-hour work week. Because sometimes you gotta show up early
mhm,
and call the truck driver to get his recorded statement or her recorded statement before they get up on the road at 7 a.m. Sometimes you gotta stay late to get that recorded statement. Sometimes you have to come in at 3 p.m. on a Sunday when they're watching football and take that recorded statement. Sometimes you got to show up at their house at 3
yeah,
p.m. on a Sunday
yeah.
to get that because that's the only time they're home.
A lot of times people work till five. They don't get home till 5:30,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to manage that. That happens with property damage or property claims too.
Yeah,
So, I don't think an independent adjuster is unaware of those dynamics, but they happen on the liability side too.
absolutely. Yeah. So, but I wanted Dustin to be aware of it because
If he's
I,
trying to get away from that,
yeah, this
he's not
isn't
going
this,
to.
yeah, this isn't the job. And for anybody else who's listening, this happens to be something that uh, uh, field adjusters, and I would even say desk adjusters have to deal with.
Mhm. Yep. So we talked about specialization and generalization already. So compensation was a question he asked about.
Hmm.
Now, I had an interesting conversation with somebody who's studying stress issues for adjusters, and one of the things we talked about were bonus programs for adjusters. And that led me to a conversation explaining how independent adjusters get paid. And there's this myth out there that adjusters get paid more if they're able to save more money on a claim, which is
Right.
false, patently false. It does not
Patently
happen.
false. Oh, it's a pet peeve. We need to have an episode on that.
Yeah, we could. But independents are generally paid on property. They're paid on a fee schedule. So if they were at an estimate from $0 to $2,500, it'll be X amount of dollars they get paid. From 2,500 to and $1 to 5,000, it'll be a different pay rate, a higher pay rate, and it keeps going up on a schedule like that. And those schedules are usually posted or provided to the adjuster before they even get the assignment so they can decide whether or not the fee schedule is something they even want to play with because sometimes they're kind of low.
Right.
So the alternative to that is a time and expense where the adjuster literally writes down everything they do and the time it takes to do it and submits that in a timesheet or an invoice when they close the claim. And that's how we bill. So we're all time and expense. We bill in tenth of an hour increments. So the adjuster has to, on top of doing all the investigation work, they have to keep track of all the time that they spend on each file. People do it differently. Some people like writing it down on a little sheet of paper. Some people like a Google sheet. Some people can do it right in our system. So, whatever works for you. But the best way to do it is to just do it as you go. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
don't wait till the end of the month and then try and go fill in all your stuff. You're going to drive yourself crazy. So just keep track of it, get in a
Right.
habit. That spreadsheet, you keep it on your computer. It's going to be on your screen all the time, and it's going to be your best friend.
Yeah,
So
plus the fact you'll forget if you don't do
yeah,
it like right then and there. One of the things to, again, keep track of or to be cognizant of is that carriers are always looking for ways to save money, and they believe that claims is the best way to cut expenses. So, what carriers do a lot of times is ram flat rate fees down independent adjusters' throats. I have not seen any for liability, but I have seen flat rate. And that's kind of sort of like the fee rate that you were talking about, except it's going to be different because it'll be, we're going to give you a property damage claim and we're going to pay you $150, period. If the bill is, if the estimate is $50,000, that's it. If the estimate is $500, you're supposed to be making money that way.
yeah,
They're supposed to be balancing out each other.
yeah. I've worked under those before, and they're not good.
No, they're not. I
They
would I
usually
would recommend
expect a lot. Yeah.
running very fast away
Yeah.
from that. Yeah.
We had experimented with flat fee services. For example, the flat fee just to take a statement from a policyholder, X amount of dollars to go do that. The problem is, well, what if it's a half an hour away, or what if it's 2 hours away? What about the time in the car that you could be using to actually do something productive somewhere else?
Mm.
You can't just give up on that time. 2 hours one way, that's 4 hours out of your day
It's a
that you
half a
wouldn't be
day.
paid for. So,
Exactly.
not only that, but some statements go quick.
Hmm.
Some don't.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
and then what is included with that? Are you going to report on that too? Because you're going to have to account for that time. Are you just going to email them the audio and call it a day? Um, so it's too difficult really to and on our website we have all the services that we provide. You can click on each window. Those were initially designed to have flat fees associated with each of them. And it just got too complicated to try and do that.
It is a
So
money losing proposition for independents, I believe.
I think so. And the goal was to make it easier for our clients to
Sure.
select because they could, it's all set up ready to go almost, where they could actually select the service right from the website, like
It's like a cafeteria plan
like
or
a
whatever.
cafeteria. But one, I'm not sure how
But
amenable our clients would be to doing that.
mm,
And two is it's just too difficult to price it.
and the thing is that it's a money losing proposition, as I mentioned, but also, oh, I had a thought. Where did it go? It went away.
I think it waters down the work product too.
That's what I was going to say is that there's always going to be that one firm that is like, oh, you're only paying me $125. I am going to slap this together.
That's what you're getting. You're going to get
You're gonna
$125 worth of work. That's it.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, the other thing that we were known for is picking up the pieces that everybody else slapped together.
That's a big problem on the property side too.
It,
When
you
you
know,
look at the comments in the forums and all the guys
mm,
complaining about doing
mm,
re-inspections that, the adjuster wrote $1,500 and the contractor wrote $35,000 and a re-inspection revealed that the adjuster just didn't do their job.
yeah, just dialed it in because probably because he's getting paid a flat rate of $500.
Could be lack of
And
experience,
yeah,
any number of things. Um, so that that pretty much covers what I'd want to talk about in terms of pay. I'm
and
not going to talk about
liability,
rates necessarily because
yeah,
they're all over the board.
they
But
are. I would say liability is also a little bit more complex.
yeah, yeah. You have to you interpreting medical records is a skill,
Mm,
and it's not easy to develop. Writing reports is a skill.
yep.
If you don't feel like you're good at writing, that if you have grammar problems in the things you're writing, and if you're not communicating properly, some of the reports that I see from our field adjusters can be difficult to parse out,
Mm,
and it's because they're not thinking through the thing logically, and that can be a challenge. So
yes.
you have to have good overall communication skills, and that doesn't just mean writing reports. It also means how you talk to people, how you explain the scenario to an injured person, because it can be very complicated. You would think, well, I just tripped on something that was left by your policyholder. It shouldn't have been there, and I got hurt. This is easy. Well, no,
Might
it's
not.
not.
Yeah.
You're over 65, so you're on Medicare. So now we've got to notify them, and they're going to put a lien on any settlements.
Yeah, or it might not even be their fault because, we've got, I don't know, a 65-year-old trespasser,
Yeah, well,
doing
that
parkour in our convenience store. I have no idea.
right. Well, and the conventional wisdom among a lot of people is I got hurt on your property,
Mm-hmm.
therefore I'm owed damages. No,
No,
it has to be
no.
there has to be
Yeah.
some negligence there too.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and
And
if there's a coverage issue, then you've got to be able to explain those issues as well. So communication is very
yes,
important. You've got to have some gray matter. Obviously, you don't need a whole lot of it, but you do have to have some brains in this job. It's not it it's I don't want to say it's not easy, but it's a complicated job.
it is a complicated job. Kevin Quinley used to say it's not rocket science, but then he backed off of that statement because it really kind of is. The amount of things that you need to know
Mhm.
is just amazing. So even for liability adjusters, you need to know law because you need to know what a tort is. You need to know negligence. You need to know the four elements of negligence. You need to know the status of the claimant. You need to know, as we talked about, how to read medical records. So you need to know what a sinister is. Is that left or right? Because they still talk in some Latin terms.
Mhm.
Yeah, so what is that? And then you need to know, for example, your CPT codes, your ICD-10 codes. Is the claimant getting normal treatment or are they milking it? Like how much treatment do you get for a sprained ankle versus being med flighted or whatever?
Right.
So, um, it's a
Yeah, and
lot.
and all this knowledge just doesn't
Oh,
appear in your
come to
head
you.
one day.
Yeah.
It's something you learn over time. I learned by mistakes,
Oh,
you know.
everybody does. Yeah.
Um, so it would be almost impossible. Well, I shouldn't say that. To create a manual for this, for the job of a liability adjuster
Yeah.
would probably be encyclopedic.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And then as soon as you got it done, you'd have to redo it because
Everything changes.
everything changes. For example, in my book, I learned that my interpretation of the ICD, no, the CPT codes have changed.
Mhm.
So it used to be like 99205, which was the highest, like rolling in on death's door was the way that I was taught it, is no longer that. I mean, it's still complex, but it's not, there's a toe tag involved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and my book is from 2021. So,
Yeah. And the more complex the claims are, the more an adjuster is going to get paid. So,
yeah, obviously.
if you're on the staff side and you're in litigation management or you are in complex large losses, your pay grade is going to be higher than an entry level who's just handling, minor slip and falls and things like that.
Right.
So,
What you would probably need is a good mentor. And I noticed that you're
mhm,
wearing your CPCU jacket today.
yes,
And of course, the Institutes does have a mentor mentee program.
yep,
Of course, I always recommend getting that continuing education, getting those designations,
yep.
like a AIC, Associates in Claims, or CPCU. Um, so, but finding a good mentor is is always needed.
That's a good segue into the topic of how to break into liability claims if you are either new or only handling property. So my answer to that for new people is generally to try and meet as many claims people as you can. And the best place to do that is usually a claims association event.
Mhm.
If you can, join as a member. If you're licensed, they should even, I don't know if you have to even be licensed to join a claims. No, you don't have to because there's a lot of vendors there.
Yeah, no,
So,
yeah. Like the GKCCA, we allow agents to come. They never do,
mhm,
but we do. The only people we don't allow would be public adjusters. Because we want it to be solely carrier focused.
mhm,
So I
yeah,
mean, independents can come. So as long as you're working for a carrier, independents can come, desk adjusters. Um, you know, the vendors. For example, I'm considered to be a vendor because I'm an expert witness, but yeah, just not policyholder adjusters.
yeah. And I'm always telling this to adjusters, no matter where you are. If if you want to do this and you think you're a good fit for a liability, send me your resume
Mm,
because I'll do two things. I'll review it and let you know. I'll give you some feedback. And two, I'll stick you in a file that if assignment comes our way that is in your territory, I will call you. You will, I will give you an opportunity to help us.
mm.
And that's sometimes all it takes is that first, call. Can you go do this slip and fall scene inspection for us? Or can you go pick up this ladder that someone fell off so we can secure that for evidence? Lots of
Done so
things.
many of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Our storage facility is getting
A
full
little full.
of
Yeah.
evidence.
Um, yeah, networking, education, I would say extremely, extremely important.
Hmm.
Yeah, so get involved with your claims associations.
Definitely listen to this podcast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're geniuses.
Join the forums on Facebook, even though they're cesspools of vitriol sometimes.
I would say LinkedIn. I mean,
LinkedIn is a good place. Yeah.
they're follow all of the claims people in LinkedIn, and there are claim pages.
Hmm. And check out the attorneys that handle
Mm,
claims for carriers. They often have some really interesting posts.
there are also, FYI, ladies, women only claim pages. So if you are a female adjuster, then you can go there. They allow men on the pages, but I mean it's like
Well, I
women.
mean, well, there are some unique, I guess, challenges
Yes,
for female adjusters that uh, male adjusters don't necessarily have to deal with.
absolutely.
Um, Wardrobe, for example, if you're going to be climbing roofs, high heels probably aren't going to cut it.
Neither will skirts.
Yeah.
But you know what? I was actually talking to a gentleman on LinkedIn, and I had been propositioned by another gentleman and on LinkedIn. And he was like, Why? And I said, this is something that women have to deal with,
Hmm.
that men never have to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, it never occurs that I know of.
Yeah, and you know, as an adjuster, you have to go to places that you've never been before and meet people that you've never met. And
Hmm.
sometimes you have to physically enter their
A
home.
person. Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're alone with a person you've never met.
Hmm.
And that comes with challenges.
Yes.
So, I certainly recognize that there are unique challenges for females versus males
Right.
in
And
this
that's not to say
business.
that men aren't put in, because I mean, I know when my dad did a couple of things, he was going to a tow facility. He got the sheriff to come in with him
Hmm.
because, he knew he was going to be walking into a bad environment with this tow company. So,
A few years ago, well, I went on a claim. It was a rental property that had been just completely trashed by the tenants,
mm,
and they had locked the owner out. She had tried for years to evict them, finally got the sheriffs out there and evicted them. And then she had to go in to see the aftermath, and it was destroyed. So I met her there, and we're walking through, and there was a bunch of stuff on the table. She picked up a paper or something, and there was a hand grenade underneath the paper. I've never seen a woman run out of a house so fast in my life. Now, I looked at it and I'm like, I don't think it's real. But she was already on the phone to 911.
I would be too, quite frankly.
So I go outside and then
I,
sheriff pulls up, screeching tires,
mm,
lights and sirens and kind of gets us away from the house. And then they bring in these bomb squad people. They brought in some detectives and they're asking us a bunch of questions. And it turned out it was a lighter.
oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, it can be. I've gone into properties, vacant properties, where I found guns hidden
Yeah.
in a closet,
Oh, wow.
and in squatters, we used to do all the foreclosure, the forced place policies,
Mm.
and back in the 90s, there was a lot of foreclosures because the interest rates were huge and people were just letting properties go, and that was a big part of what I did as a young adjuster was go to these vacant properties. And there was a lot of times there was somebody hiding out in there, which
Yeah.
was a little scary.
Well, now we're talking about the things that you do. How does ACM handle like liability claims? Because I mean, you not only need to know how to, like what we talked about, read medical bills, gather all this information. It's kind of like herding cats doing liability. There's a lot of work to be done, but you also, more often than not, have to talk with attorneys.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
then
so
and
I
then
would
every once in a
say
while you get a lawsuit coming in.
I'd say 50% of our assignments are limited to um, the initial investigation. Probably less than 50, maybe 30% of them are where we're just doing the initial, we're talking to the insured, talking to the claimant or their attorney to find out what happened, to get some photographs. We'll probably order the medical records, but get them to the carrier, and then that's usually it. Most of them, I would say that the rest of them, carriers ask us to pretty much handle the claim. They have desk adjusters that have a pending of 200 or more. They
Right.
don't, they can't do the field work.
Mhm.
They want us to help them. And we are literally there to help them. We're not a staff member. We don't act like a staff member, but we're taking a lot off their plate, as much as we can off of their plate. And that's a challenge. So really what we do is for an experienced liability adjuster, you, that's why we segmented into field adjusters and what I call managing general adjusters. The field adjusters are the folks that kind of do the field work of the photos and all that stuff. The MGA will sit and manage that claim.
Right.
And then when we get authority, we will negotiate with the attorney or the claimant and we'll take a release and get settled. And, we
How
got
do
to get the
you
lien information and all that.
how do you determine? Because I hear this all the time, is how do you determine what the value of a claim is?
That typically comes from experience and a lot of discussions with the stakeholders.
Mm,
So the attorney is going to give you their opinion. The um, desk adjuster is going to give you their opinion, and you're going to have your own opinion. Most of my clients have roundtable discussions for these things. So there's no charts, there's no magic
yeah.
formula. It's based on experience.
It
I,
is there.
I,
There is a rumor that there's a formula, guys. I will say that there, and I haven't heard it in a long, long time, which is the quote unquote the three times meds.
yeah,
But that doesn't work.
no,
That is
no,
not a formula.
yeah. I mean, it is a formula,
Well,
just
yes, it is a
not
formula,
the
but
right one,
you
not
can't
a
settle
useful
off of
one.
that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can. You'd be surprised. Some folks really, the claimant is the ultimate arbiter of what they'll accept.
Mm,
And when that fails or breaks down, then it's a judge or a jury who will decide what they're going to accept. And sometimes that claimant has um, expectations that are not based in reality. You know,
right.
they
Yes.
they they break a fifth metatarsal and they want $1 million. That's
Hmm.
not going to happen. Sorry. Yeah, you broke a bone, and yeah, you got hurt and you lost some income for however many days or weeks. Um, so we have to look at it through that lens. We have to look at the special damages, the hard costs like medical bills, lost wages, any extra expenses that they may have incurred. Um, and then we look at the general damages, and that's how much are you going to accept for a fractured elbow
Hmm.
or a busted shoulder or a concussion. What is the number? What would you accept? We used to play a game when I was in construction through college and stuff. We'd sit around at lunch and we'd just joke about how much would you accept for me to take a nail gun and put a nail through your hand? How
Oh,
much would it cost? And we'd go
oh,
around the room
boys.
and the tough guy'd be like $500, and the other guy'd be like, there's no amount of money in the world that would do it for me. So just having it's actually an interesting exercise to talk to 5 or 10 people and ask them, how much would you accept for me to physically break your arm today?
Right. And I think that is something that is a little bit different concept for people. And I talked about it a little bit where there is a range to settle.
Hmm.
And some people and some attorneys believe that if we as carriers or adjusters settle at our first number, then we are quote unquote lowballing. And that is not the case. Likewise, it doesn't mean that if we settle at the top range number, that we've overpaid. No, there is a range. And the example that I always give, and a lot of people don't necessarily know that, but there's a speed limit range. Like there's a lower amount. Most people don't know it. It's like 35 or whatever. And then you've got the higher, like the actual one that we all exceed, except me. I never speed ever.
Never.
Never. And I didn't recently get pulled over and get a ticket or anything like that. Not at all. Um,
Shame, shame, shame.
Shame, I know. In my defense, he was a motorcycle cop and you couldn't see him. Anyway,
Ah,
but yeah,
that's not a defense.
that is a total defense. Because I would have like slowed down. All right.
Well, where people are conditioned to think about prices or costs
Yes,
and a price list kind of mindset. I just Googled here, a gallon of milk uh, came up. Walmart is $3.48,
right.
and there's a range. Uh,
Right. Absolutely.
it's
But
more
that
expensive in some stores than others.
and that doesn't mean and one of the things that we also need to be thinking about in regards to our values and our prices is a value in a plaintiff oriented venue such as South Texas or Florida or Kentucky will be higher than in a more conservative location.
Mhm.
So,
Here in New York, because I we handle primarily upstate New York, not much
mm,
in New York City, but we know that if a case is sued in New York City, it's going to have a much different value than if it's up here in a rural county.
right,
And even in the cities local here, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, a claim in that venue versus one out in the hinterlands is going to have likely a different outcome. So
right.
there's a lot of dynamics that come into play as in terms of value. And again, the the claimant's perception of where it should be is a huge factor
Mm,
because a lot of times we deal with claims between relatives or friends,
yeah.
and they're not really looking to get rich. They just maybe want their medical bills paid and a little bit. And sometimes they don't even want a little bit.
Hmm.
They just want to make sure that they get their medical bills paid. And sometimes they're afraid that they're going to have an impact on their friend or their relative if they make a claim.
Right.
And oh boy, I got a comment on TikTok from that guy who who told me that I should not be telling people that when they make a claim, if they ultimately have to sue that matter, they'll be suing potentially their friend or their neighbor who owned
Mm,
the property. That
yeah,
I
that's
shouldn't
true.
be telling them that because then they'll be afraid to make the claim and they won't get money that they would otherwise deserve. I have to tell them that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the facts.
Yeah, yeah,
You're not
yeah.
suing the insurance company, you're
No,
suing the property owner. And
yeah.
I've even seen an ad for an attorney that said that they were a bodily injury attorney, and they said, don't let them tell you that you're going to be suing the property owner. We all know that the insurance company pays these claims. Like, come on.
Oh
Who's show
my.
me the lawsuit then?
Oh, gee whiz. Well,
No,
I think we've pretty much talked about everything
I think so.
about what it takes to be a liability adjuster, the licensing. Again, I think we both agree that getting general licensing is better.
You're better off.
Um, I think so because I think you can be a more well-rounded and you can fill in your gaps if it happens to be a slow month or a slow year or whatever.
And there's some
Um,
additional things you're going to have to learn
mhm,
on top of the property stuff to get that license, but it's not impossible, and you're going to be better for it. You're going
mhm,
to be more informed about claims, and then get your AIC. I think if you do those two things, if you really want to become a liability adjuster, those two things will make it easy.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, get networking and I would also say, guys, if you're listening, ladies, um, make a comment. Ask us questions because we obviously respond to them with our
Yeah.
five
Oh,
listeners.
yeah,
Um,
I meant to in this episode, throughout this episode, say multiple times, and I haven't, that if you have questions on claims, please contact us. Dustin
Absolutely.
contacted us through the website, acm dot, no, claims. And you can comment, I believe, I don't know,
I,
can you comment on Spotify?
I don't know if you can comment on Spotify, but I do get comments every once in a while on YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and so go to our YouTube or my YouTube, it's Chantel Roberts, or you can just search for The Art of Adjusting,
you can
and
find us.
you can find us so
If you're
easily.
listening to us, you can find us. And so
Yes,
ask us questions and we'll be glad to talk about them because it makes interesting discussions for these.
absolutely.
And chances are, if you have a question, there's probably hundreds of other people out there that have the same question. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So happy anniversary or episode, epiversary.
epiversary.
Happy epiversary.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we'll see you what in 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All
We'll
right.
see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on the Art of Adjusting podcast, where we talk about life as an insurance adjuster.
If you enjoyed this podcast or this episode, please give us 5 stars and a review. It does help the algorithm pick us up.
Hit that subscribe button real quick and tell all of your adjuster friends to check this out as well. For independent adjusting services, go to www.autin.claims. And for anyone interested in working as an independent liability adjuster, go to the Contact Us tab to join our roster.
In the meantime, you can contact me at theartofadjusting.com for consulting and training purposes.